Everyone back? Good morning. Well, last week we talked about getting naked, and those of you who weren't here are probably saying, "Oh, I'm glad I missed that." You can't unsee that, can you? Last week was Wendy's first time as our MC, and she came up to me beforehand, and she said, "I'm a little bit nervous." I said, "Don't worry, just imagine everybody naked." And you did a great job. You did a great job today, too. No, we didn't really talk about getting naked. We talked about having an authentic, pure, genuine, real relationship with this transparent energy that most of us call God. We talked about having a clear connection, nothing hidden, with what I call our authentic essence. And we took a look at the creation story found in Genesis to realize that God is not emotionally erratic or chaotic. God is not moody or temperamental or angry or volatile or violent or withholding or cruel. If God were any expression of human emotion, it would be love, unconditional love, eternal unconditional love, eternal omnipresent unconditional love. Wow. Isn't that amazing truth to meditate on? So why is this important to have this authentic, clear, genuine relationship with God the Creator? Well, some of us might be holding on to ideas, old ideas, maybe even outdated ideas, or false beliefs, or confusing beliefs that only keep us feeling this sense of separation, that keep us feeling that there's a blockage in the flow of life, in and through and as and around us. So when we hear of God's grace, the easy flow of spirit in life, or like last week as we talked about the image of God walking in the garden in the cool of the day, that free, easy, abundant flow of spirit, we're not feeling it. And we wonder why. Well, this idea of having an authentic relationship with God can be compared somewhat to the relationship of a parent to a child. Even now, as adults, we might respond and react to the memory or the thought of a parent or child, or a parent or a grandparent, some creator image in our lives, as if we're still the rebellious teenager. You know what I mean? Did you go through that rebellious teenage years, or was it just me? Even now, still there, yeah. Even now. Remember those rebellious teenage years when whatever your mother said, you said the opposite? Whatever your father did, it was, just bug the stuff out of you. So you kind of went your way and they went their way, and they didn't get you and you didn't get them, and you spent most of your time back in your bedroom listening over and over to that record of Janice Ian singing At 17. Remember that song? To those of us who knew the pain of Valentines that never came, to those whose names were never called when choosing teams for basketball. Those teenage years. Well, really, what we're talking about this morning is growing up, is coming into spiritual maturity, having a full, holistic, real, adult, if you will, relationship with God the Creator. Spirit, life, whatever you want to call it. A relationship that's honest, nothing hidden, life-enhancing, life-fulfilling. Speaking of high school, I wanted to share a story with you. Some of you already know this, but I started out in art school. And actually, I had a scholarship to Heron School of Art in Indianapolis. And it started the summer after my junior year. So I started taking college art classes that summer, and then throughout my senior year on the weekends, and then the next summer. So I had a whole bunch of college credits before I even went to college. But I just loved it. Here I was, a teenager with those college kids, and I was so enamored by all of them, and especially the art students. They are so creative, and some were kind of flamboyant, and some were kind of bohemian, and I just thought they were so cool. And I remember one of the rooms where the art classes took place was one whole wall was just windows, and it let in natural light. It was just beautiful. It was a perfect room, and it was for our drawing class. And we'd sit in a circle, and we'd sit at these drafting type table desks, and then in the middle of the circle was a platform, and sometimes the teacher would put a table with a vase and some flowers, and we'd draw that, or a table with a vase and a bowl of fruit, and we'd learn how to draw that. But I remember one time I was on my way to class, and right outside the door there was 4 or 5 college boys, and I just thought they were so cool. And I got closer, and I realized one of them wasn't an art student, and he was just so handsome. He had long brown hair and dark eyes and chiseled face, and just had a handsome face. And I thought, well, he must be an ROTC student or taking military classes, because he had camouflage pants on, and he didn't have a shirt on. He was really muscular and everything. Oh gosh, he was handsome. I walked on into the classroom, and class started, and we all sat down, and then that guy came and stood on the pedestal and disrobed and kind of made like a Greek Olympic athlete kind of pose like that. And you think I blush a lot now. You can imagine back then. And I'm trying to draw, and I'd kind of peek up, and the teacher would come around and say, "Oh no, that should be much more round." And talk about an eye-opening experience. But right then, I realized how humanity has such strong opinions about the human body. And some cultures want to cover it up completely. Some cultures, like the ancient Greeks, want to celebrate it and to honor the beauty of the body. But we ourselves have strong opinions about the human body, whether it's ours or someone else's. And we've been hearing a lot about body shaming in the news lately. What a heartbreaking concept we've created. But whether it's shame, it doesn't have to be just for the human body. Shame for any reason. It could be feeling ashamed of our financial situation, or a problem that we're having with balancing our checkbook. It could be shame for maybe a relationship that we find ourselves in that isn't healthy for us. Or maybe it is about our bodies, or maybe a health condition we're dealing with and how we're choosing to treat it. Or maybe there's too much bulk, not enough bulk, or the way it operates, or whatever. Or maybe it's in regard to our creative expression, and maybe feeling embarrassed that we haven't contributed more. Whatever it is, shame makes us want to hide, makes us want to separate. It makes us want to hide that part of ourselves that isn't living up to that standard. Whatever the mental judgment, whether it's shame or blame or guilt or fear or anxiety or some kind of lack, can we have a perfect relationship with ourselves if we hold any of those kind of mental judgments? Can we really know ourselves to be perfect, whole, and complete when we have mental judgments like that in our life? No. Well, last week we talked about, speaking of shame, we talked about the story of Adam and Eve in the garden. And the story says they were naked and they were not ashamed. You see, shame hadn't been created yet. They knew nothing of shame. It's amazing to think about, isn't it? So here they were, Adam and Eve, in paradise, feeling free, unencumbered, feeling beautiful, feeling great about themselves, don't you think? Don't you think? All their needs were met, richly supplied. Everything was perfect in paradise, like a perpetual Polynesian vacation. But somehow they came to judge themselves as lacking. And as a result of that feeling like there was something lacking, they felt afraid and they felt ashamed. And it all came about from eating an apple. What had changed? Were they still in the garden? Yes. Were they still surrounded by beauty and creativity? Yes. Were they still surrounded by abundance and an unconditional love? Yes. What changed? Their mental judgments changed. Their perception changed. She perceived that the fruit was good to eat, that it was pleasing to the eye, and that it was good for making one wise. It appeared that way to her. She judged it to be that way, even though God, her God self, knew that wasn't the case. She had been told the truth was written on her heart, but when it came to applying the truth, she allowed her mental judgments to take precedence over her first nature. So, she sees this apple tree, and she goes and she picks the fruit off of it. That's good. Not as good as those bananas, though. I really like bananas. That banana tree, that's my favorite. Oh, that's pretty, too. Not as pretty as the cherry tree, though. The cherry tree is my favorite. Do you think that Eve ate more than one apple? Maybe Adam reached up and he was picking an apple and she said, no, don't do that. I've been sitting here chewing on these numbers, chowing down on these facts and figures, and I figure if you eat an apple and I eat an apple, then you eat an apple, then I eat an apple, pretty soon all the apples will be gone and there won't be any more. Here, come and just have a little bite of my apple. You know, as I'm chewing on this apple, things are so clear to me now. And there's something that's been gnawing at me. What's God got against apples anyway? I mean, who does God think she is telling us not to eat the apples? God's never said no to me. That's really hard to swallow. So you see, it wasn't so much that they fell as it was they drifted. They separated. They took their mind off of the source of life. As Charles Fillmore writes in his book, The Mysteries of Genesis, they departed from spiritual consciousness and saw both good and evil. He goes on to say, if man had held to the one good, good is the only thing that he could have manifested. Isn't that marvelous to think about? The third basic principle of unity says we are co-creators with God, creating reality through thoughts held in mind. Co-creative process. Think of a co-creative process that you've been in. Maybe putting together an event and everyone's on the same page of how it's going to come down. Or maybe starting a business or building a house or going on a vacation and you're both seeing that vision. Or even trying to maneuver a curved couch through a narrow doorway. It doesn't work if one person's thinking one way and the other person's thinking the other way, right? You have to come into agreement. You have to have that same vision. I can relate to the co-creative process, having been a songwriter in Nashville. And I wrote for Millsap Publishing. Do you remember Ronnie Millsap? Remember the band Alabama? I wrote for Alabama Music and 2 or 3 other companies. But the whole idea was co-writing. 2 songwriters coming together, hopefully to write a hit song. And when it worked, it was great. But when it didn't, it was painful. Sitting in the room with somebody that didn't speak your language, had a totally different idea of how to write a song or what lyric to use or whatever, you just couldn't wait until the session was over. But when it came together, it was like you both see the vision of the story you want to tell in the song. And you're looking at each other as if you're communicating telepathically. And you can just see it, how it's supposed to unfold. And you say the first line, and they say the second line, and you say the third line, they say beautiful. You understand that co-creative process I'm talking about? Well, I want to be as straightforward as I can with you and say, you can't enter into a co-creative process with God unless you're in alignment with spiritual consciousness. You see, when Adam and Eve started thinking about things like shame and lack and guilt and blame and fear and things like that, it was as if God said, does not compute. God knows nothing of lack or limitation or insufficiency. God knows nothing of dis-ease or discomfort or weakness. God knows nothing of shame or blame or guilt or anxiety or fear. So those 2 things can't come together in a co-creative process. You might as well be trying to hook up a garden hose to an electrical outlet. It's not going to work. That's like putting snow cones together with blowtorches. It's not a good idea. Or trying to mix oil and water. It doesn't go together. So what we're talking about is having a clear connection. I value authenticity in relationships, don't you? And last week we talked about having an authentic relationship with God. And this week we're talking about having an authentic relationship with ourselves. Taking a look at those parts of ourselves that might not be in alignment with spiritual consciousness. Taking a deep look at the area of prosperity and letting go of any false beliefs in lack, limitation, or insufficiency. Taking a look in the area of health and vitality and letting go of those false ideas of dis-ease or discomfort or weakness. Taking a look at the area of love and all of our relationships and truly, truly, truly loving ourselves and loving others as the perfect, whole, and complete beings that they are. When you think about it, were they naked? No. They were clothed in the garment of truth. And the truth is that you're a pure expression of all that God is. And when you practice authenticity and you come into alignment with this authentic essence that you are, then you come into a co-creative process and begin to co-create the kind of life you want to live and the kind of world you want to live in. Are you ready to do that this morning? May it be so. And so it is. We're going to go into a time of contemplation, just a little exercise here to help to ground these thoughts and ideas. If you want to put both feet on the floor, I always like to ground myself that way. Take a few deep breaths. Allow yourself just to think for a moment about the elements of your life, being gentle with yourself. Just consider right now the area of prosperity, being gentle with yourself, loving yourself. Just take a look. Are there any ideas or beliefs or thoughts of anything other than the free flowing abundance of spirit in and through and as you? And if there are, just allow those thoughts and feelings to just melt away into the nothingness from where they came. And allow yourself to feel the abundance of spirit. You might want to take a deep breath. And just gently allow yourself to consider the area of health and vitality. And just ask yourself, are there areas of my life when it comes to my body, when it comes to my health, in which I feel any fear or any shame, any kind of mental judgment? Anything not God. And just allow yourself to release any of those kind of feelings, those thoughts. And allow the truth of God's vitality to fill your mind. The energy of God swirling in and through and as you. You might want to take a deep breath. We're just going to take a look at one more area, and that's the area of love and relationships. And if anyone's name or face comes to your awareness, if there's any need for forgiveness or a greater expression of love, just allow yourself to connect with that love that you are. Releasing any blockages between you and another person. Just letting anything unlike the pure, unconditional love of God to flow out as you, touching all of your relationships. Now take a deep breath with me and just silently affirm, I open my heart and my mind to a greater expression of all that God is. I open my heart and my mind to a greater expression of all that God is. And when you're ready, you can come back to the room and open your eyes. Okay.